Hi friends, it's Unicorn and Happy New Year! If you're watching this video on the day it released, you're watching on the Chinese New Year, and this year is the year of Tiger. Tiger in China is known as the king of all the beasts. So no matter if you are celebrating this New Year or not, I wish you have a strong year as a tiger. And every year around this time, I like to make the video about the top books in the Chinese reading community for the previous year. It's also one of my favorite videos to make because we got to compare the two of my favorite reading communities, Douban, which is the Chinese reading community I'm following, and also our community. And sometimes we can recognize some books on Douban that is also popular here on BookTube, and it's always interesting. As usual, I'll talk about the popular books on the Chinese reading community in 4 different categories. The first one is the most popular books of 2021, and the second one is the top rated books of 2021. Third one is the top Chinese books of 2021, and the fourth one is the top translated books of 2021 with an exception that we'll talk about later. Here, translated means that any books that was translated from another language into Chinese. And because of the limited time we got here, I can't talk about every detail about every books on those lists. I also made a pairing blog post of this video, which I'll link down below, with every book's information and also their English information if they have been published in English. So feel free to check it out if you are interested. And now let's talk about the most popular books of 2021. The book that is leading the rank is called 克拉拉与太阳 by Kazu Ishiguro, and you got it. The book is Clara and the Sun. It's translated into Chinese by Song Qian. I don't think I need to introduce this book to you guys because as the new science fiction release of Kazu Ishiguro, this book is popular all over the world, and it's not surprised that it's ranked as number 1 on the popular books list. This book has a rating of 8.2 over 10. If you're thinking about it using a 5-star rating system, this book is about a 4.1, so it's slightly higher in the Chinese reading community. And I also have 4 friends on the Chinese reading community who has already read it, and the average rating of my friends is 7.5, so slightly lower than average. And as for myself, I haven't read any of his books yet, so I'm attempting to fixing that this year. And the second book on this list I have actually read, and it's called 字母表疑案 Alphabet do Puzzle, The Alphabet Murders. It's written by Oyama San Izulu and translated into Chinese by Cao Yibing. This is a short detective story collection featuring the same group of friends, and they like to sit together and solving murders and mysteries together. This book is very fun, but also not as rigorous as a detective story collection, but it was marketed really well in the Chinese reading community, so it got very popular. Number 3 on this list is called 从零开始的女性主义. The original title is 親の先生ファミニズムについてゼロから教えてください. It means feminism from zero or feminism 101 by the Japanese sociologist Oelo Chizuko and translated into Chinese by Liu Lingzhi. As the title suggests, it's a book about feminism 101, talks about how we should think about feminism in our life, in workplace, in the education for next generation. Next, there's a book about Chinese economy called 置身事内, roughly translates to Looking from Within by Lan Xiaohuan. This book takes a close look at the Chinese economy in recent years and how different policies impact the economy growth. I'm very interested in this book, and I might read it for my Chinese reading of the year. Next is a very popular book in Western reading community. It's called 也许你该找个人聊聊. Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb and translated into Chinese by Zhang Hanxiao. This book is a memoir of a therapist who also needed help. I read this book in 2020, and to be honest, I was a little surprised to see it on the list because it didn't have a lasting impression on me, but the book actually have amazing ratings in both communities. It's rated as 8.9 over 10 on Douban and 4.38 over 5 on Goodreads, so Goodreads is slightly lower but still amazing rating. Number 6 on this list is a book written in Chinese. It's called 流行西方现代思想讲义, Liu Qing's lecture notes on the Western modern thoughts, and by the scholar and philosopher Liu Qing. This book is based on a series of lectures that Liu Qing gives out about modern Western thoughts, of course. It covers topics like the origin of the Western modern thoughts and the lessons we can learn from the 20th century, and also reflect on liberalism. And as you may expect, this book is another book on my not very secretive Chinese book to read in 2022 list. The next book is a translated book that I haven't heard of. It's called 下沉年代, translated by Liu Ran from George Parker's book called The Unwinding. This book examines the crisis that America is in from all different people's lives, including billionaire, workers, and farmers, and a lot more. It talks about how the nation is in danger of its sins. This book is rated as 8.6 on Douban and 4.13 on Goodreads. And like I said before, I've never heard about this book. After I know what it's about, I totally get why it's popular. Following, we got a Chinese novel on this list. It's called 文城 by Yu Hua. I don't think the title needs translation because I think Wencheng is actually the name of a city, and it's talking about a mysterious man is looking for a city that is non-existent. Wencheng is one of the most profound authors in China now, and he has a lot of books translated into English, including To Live and China in 10 Words. So maybe this book will get picked up soon too. Second to the last is a fiction book called 海边的房间, A Room by the Sea by Huang Liqun. This is a collection of 12 unexpected and twisting short stories, and the author said these stories are dark, they're ruined, they're ugly, but they are also about the little scars in our lives that we cannot stop loving. And I just love the description, and I'm so curious what this book is about. The last book on this list is called 铜川跟踪狂杀人事件 Okinawa Stalker Jiken, The Murder Case of a Stalker in Okinawa. It's by Japanese author Kimizu Kiyoshi and translated into Chinese by Wang Hua Mao. This is a nonfiction about a murder case that happened in Okinawa when a young woman was stabbed to death by a group of stalkers, and the police was responded very slow and irresponsible. This is a very important book because that case led to the changes of how Japanese legal system treat stalking and stalkers, and the author is that journalist who kept following up on this case and finally led it to be solved. I finished this book in January and I liked it for the subject matter, but I also think that as a book, it needs more edit, but more on that in my wrap-up. And that concludes the most popular books in 2021, and now let's talk about the highest rated books in 2021. Usually this list has a lot of book crossover with the most popular book, but last year there are only 2 books that are crossover. One of them is the Liu Qing's lecture notes on Western modern thought, and the other one is The Murder Case by the Stalker in Okinawa. And on this list, the book with the highest rating is 切尔诺贝利的午夜 Midnight in Chernobyl by Adam Higginbotham, and this book was translated into Chinese by Lu Yi. This is another book I feel like everyone has read it but me, and the rating of this book is 9.1. It's unsurprising at all since everybody read it and it's such an important book. The second highest rating book is called 陆川有许多份 Noxian by the South Korean writer and director Lee Chang-dong, translated into Chinese by Chun Xi. This is a short story collection talking about the day-to-day life of people in this rapidly changing society, focusing on the characters' evolving destinies and the realities of life. The book on the third place is called 旗主之声 His Master's Voice by Stanislaw Lem and translated by Yu Mei. This is a science fiction and thriller masterpiece and talks about the possibility and what will happen if scientists has a chance to discover other beings in the universe. And what does it mean by men of science? This book has a 9.1 rating on Douban and 4.1 rating on Goodreads. Following, there's a book called 13 Talks, the third volume by Xu Zhiyuan. 13 Talks is a series of TV show where the author interviews people, and after the show the author collected all the information in the interview and made them into 4 books. The third volume is a volume where he interviewed scholars and writers. I have not watched the show nor read the books, but I have a lot of friends who loved them. The 5th place is the Liu Qing's lecture notes on modern thoughts that we already covered. The 6th books on this list is another science fiction. It's called 挽救计划 Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, translated translated by Geng Hui. This book is talking about a man who is the sole survivor of Earth and the final hope of preserving humanity and the culture of Earth. However, he doesn't know about it yet. He can't even remember his own name. This book sounds so intriguing and has a 9.1 on Douban and a 4.53 on Goodreads. It's about the same rating. Following the aforementioned The Stalker Murder Case in Okinawa, coming in at the 7th place, and I just realized I keep messing with the English translation of the title of this book, like saying them in different word orders, but it's a book about a stalker who stalked and killed a young woman. In the 8th place, there's a book called 她来自马里乌波尔. She came from Mariupol and is written by German writer Natasha Uden and translated by Deng Qinwen. This is the autobiography of the author finding out the truth behind her mother's death when she's 10 years old. The author knows nothing about her parents except one thing, and that is her parents had to leave Mariupol because of the Nazi forced labor program. And this book sounds absolutely heartbreaking. It has a 9 out of 10 rating on Douban and 4.16 on Goodreads. The second to the last book on this list is called 重走在公路河流和驿道上寻找西南联大 by Yang Xiao. The English title of this book is called To the Finest School I Know. This is the nonfiction about the author's experience revisiting the route of a moving of a legendary university in China called the National Southwest Association University. The author backpacked the route that the university used back in the days and reflect and rethink the correlated history and the present. The National Southwest Association University is a very important chapter on the Chinese modern history, and it's found during the Second Sino-Japanese War, aka the Second World War. It is very important for the education during that time, and after the war, that university split into different important and profound universities which still stand today. So over the years, I see so many scholars are still studying that chapter of history, and I see books about that university popping up every once in a while. The last book on this list is a biography of Bourgeois, and it's called 成为波伏娃, Becoming Bourgeois by Kate Kirkpatrick and translated by Liu Haiping. Bourgeois, The Second Sex is a classic text for feminism and is beloved by the Chinese reading community. So it makes sense that her biography is also very intrigued in the community as well. And it has a 9 over 10 rating on Douban and a 4.34 on Goodreads. And that concludes the top rated books in 2021. And now let's move on to the top Chinese books and top translated books. I'm not going to talk about every book on the list because every of the category is also divided into fiction and non-fiction, and it's like 40 books in total. We cannot do that. So I'm just going to talk about the books on the list that has the top 3 highest ratings. For fiction in Chinese, we have 浮木 by Yang Benfen, translated to The Floating Woods. This is actually the sequel to her previous novel called Qiu Yuan, which is named after the protagonist Qiu Yuan. It talks about a life of a grandmother and her mom, and how people's lives are like a floating woods in history and cannot control itself, and some of the floating woods are shattered, some still have the chance to survive. When Qiu Yuan was published, I grabbed it immediately because I wanted to read it, but I just didn't get to it. So now the sequel has come out. It's a sign for me to read it, I think. The second book here is called 家庭生活 by Yao Emei. The title translates to The Family Life, and of course, it's a book about contemporary family life and discusses the thing that we see in our day-to-day life, and also discuss the new relations we have with our family members in this internet age. Both 浮木 and 家庭生活 are rated as 8.6 over 10 on Douban. The third book is called 破晓时分 Down by Zhu Xining. This is the first time that Zhu Xining's work has been published in simplified Chinese. It has 13 short stories and talking about the culture and people's lifestyles in Taiwan under a reality lens. For nonfiction in Chinese, the aforementioned book 重走 To the Finest School I Know has the highest rating, which is 9.1 on Douban. The second book on the Chinese nonfiction is also one of my favorite of all of these, is 我的灵魂骑在纸背上 by San Mao, translates to My Soul is Riding on the Back of Papers. This is a collection of the letters San Mao wrote to her friends and family, and San Mao is my favorite writer of all time. I love her and her work to the deepest of my soul. She enlightened my love for literature and writing. I'm forever grateful for her for that. And also I'm forever grateful for my mom who introduced her to me. But there was a collection of letters of hers that was published under the same title. And to my understanding, this is a new edition of it with some letters that has never been published before. The book is rated 8.7 out of 10. Then there is Wei Chen, Nobody by Chen Yanxi. This is a collection of 21 non-fiction stories about people who we take as granted and never set eyes on, including the workers for Explosion Works, the rock delivery guy, and carpenters, and a lot more. This book is a record of their life and how they get by. It has a 8.5 out of 10 rating. Move on to translated books. For translated fiction, the book we mentioned, 陆川有许多份, Yuxian by Li Qiangdong, came at the first place with a 9 out of 10 rating. The second highest rating on this list is 流俗地, The Vulgar Place by Li Zishu. And this book is an exception because although Li Zishu is a Malaysian author, the book was actually originally written in Chinese and is part of the Chinese-Malaysian literature. This is a novel about how people are finding light and hope when they're in absolute darkness. I think I'll add this book to my Malaysian reading for the From and About Asia project when I catch up to the month of Malaysia. The book that has the third highest rating in this list is by a Cuban author, Guillermo Cabrera Infante. It's called 三只忧伤的老虎, and the Spanish title of this book is a tongue twister, and I've been trying here for like 5 minutes. It's called Tres Tristes Tigres, Three Sad Tigers. It was translated into Chinese by Fan Ye. This is an experimental work set in 1958, talking about three young people's nightlife set in the pre-revolutionary Havana. The last category we are going to talk about is translated nonfiction. The book that has the highest rating in this category is called 太多值得思考的事物. There's simply too much to think about. Collected nonfiction by So Bello. It's translated into Chinese by Li Chunyi and So Ma Li. This is the essay collection by the Nobel Prize winner So Bello, and including essays and book reviews, film reviews, interviews, and a lot more. The second book here is called 兰波评传, written about by Yves Bonsoir, translated into Chinese by Bai Deya. This is a very detailed book about every aspect of Rimbaud's life, and because it's written by another poet, so it has the understanding from a literary level. This book has a 9.1 rating on Douban and a 4.15 on Goodreads. The book that comes at the third place is Becoming Bourgeois, a life that we already talked about. And that's all the books I want to introduce you on those lists in this video. And again, due to the limited time we have, I cannot possibly talk about every book on those lists. Also, besides the 4 main lists I mentioned in this video, there's so many other lists about the popular genre fictions in 2021. So as I said, I'll link a blog post about this video and about all the list information and all the English information I can find down below in the description box, and also the original list from douban.com. You are more than welcome to check them out. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know any of your thoughts in the comment section down below. If there are any books you are interested in, if there are any books you want me to talk more about, and don't forget to say hi, thumbs up to this video if you liked it. I wish you happy reading, stay healthy. I'll see you in my next bookish video. Bye!